Good morning. It is Tuesday, April the 28th, and I've got your bell ringer answer from Monday's question. Monday's question dealt with food deserts, and food deserts have been a really popular topic on the AP exam for the service learning classes. That's always a big issue when you talk about food insecurity. So let's make sure we have a good working definition for food desert first. The most common mistake that students make right off the bat with food deserts are to say that it's a food desert if it's a place where there isn't food. That's famine, so we would use that term if that was what we really meant. Food desert refers to a place where there's a lack of nutritious and healthy food. Okay, so it's an area, a region, a part of a community where there's a lack of healthy or nutritious foods. Okay? Now, food deserts can be places where people are facing hunger, but they can also be places where there's hidden hunger. People are just not getting the right types of calories and the right types of nutrients. All right, so the next question says, where in the world might one find one of these? So food deserts, a couple of different categories we would talk about. Food deserts in the developing world, food deserts in the developed world. In the developing world, you might be talking about food deserts in places where people just simply do not have access to food. Failure of local production, failure of the distribution system, no ability to get food to villages. It could be that you're dealing with some sort of a significant drought or an environmental disaster that's causing local farms to fail, or a lack of modern agricultural technology. So in the United States, we might be able to grow that particular type of food, but in your less developed country, you don't have access to fertilizers, pesticides. You don't have access to tractors or other types of machinery that would help you be more productive. You don't have access to the genetically modified items that might help overcome problems with hunger. Okay, in the developed country, on the other hand, though, food deserts are usually associated with the types of food that are available. So now we would divide them in the United States between urban and rural. In an urban food desert, you're going to be talking about a community that there is no grocery store. There is no farmer's market. In some cases, this could be because the community is so impoverished that people are not able to afford those items, so commercial businesses are not interested in providing them. In other cases, this could be simply choices made by people in those communities. So lower income families have a more difficult time with fresh fruits and vegetables because they cost more. They don't have a long shelf life. They take time to prepare. They are not seen as something that is very popular for children or members of the community to eat because, hey, Doritos taste amazing. Brussels sprouts, maybe not as exciting. So some of those problems with the choices people are making. And then finally, the proliferation of non-healthy choices. The bags of chips, the candy, they're all available at the corner store. The fast food restaurants are readily available. The fresh fruits and vegetables aren't. So usually when you try to combat food deserts, step one is to try to get the food available. Step two then is also to try to get people to want to buy the food. Okay. Think about what's in a food pantry. Food pantries that try to help meet the needs of low-income individuals, they oftentimes are foods that are not necessarily the most nutritious because they are things that are boxed or canned. They will help combat hunger, but they don't necessarily fulfill all the needs of what people need for a nutritious diet. Then let's talk about rural Americans. Rural Americans, one of the most common misconceptions for students are to say, well, there's a food desert in rural America because people, they're not growing the food they need, or they just need to have their own gardens to produce their own food. And they're missing the fact that rural Americans are commercial farmers who are usually monocropping. They're growing corn, they're growing soybeans, and the bulk of people who live in rural America, they're not farming because rural Americans do other things for a living. Farming is down to like 1% of Americans. So the other group of Americans, that other 19% of Americans who are rural, they're doing something else other than farming. And there probably isn't a grocery store anywhere near them because they live out in a rural community, far away from a city, and the grocery store needs a large number of customers in order to stay in business. And So perhaps the grocery store is 10, 20, 30 miles or more away, and you have to drive there and drive back. So you end up with a food desert that has a big problem because you're so disconnected from everything else. Are you going to have a fast food restaurant in those rural areas? Maybe the threshold for a McDonald's is a little lower, a grandma's pizza, something like that. But regular fresh fruits and vegetables probably not very available in your community. What are some of the economic implications? You start to see certain types of businesses show up in food deserts. Things like fast food restaurants and corner stores, because they do sell well. You tend to not see grocery stores, which are larger, larger businesses that offer more jobs. You also start to see the neighborhood itself turn down. People like to live in a place where there are grocery stores, where there are farmers markets. Those are more desirable neighborhoods. And when you don't have those sorts of things, it makes it more difficult to live in a particular area and helps to and forces down the value of property if it's a food desert. And then before you know it, you end up with neighborhoods of cities that are seen as sort of undesirable locations. Okay, so that's it for our Tuesday. Hope that helps you get thinking a little bit about food deserts and what they mean. Remember, it's not that there isn't food. It's that there isn't available, healthy, nutritious food. All right. Make sure that you're staying on top of all of your review materials for this week. I'll be back tomorrow with another video for another bell ringer.